It is vlog 144, and my thanks to those of you who weighed in the comments on the last vlog. We talked about a flawed deck that had taken place in 2012 at the Rio, and I was curious if any of you had seen that, and I asked for comments regarding it. And for those of you who have not read those comments, you want to get a look at a lot of good stories about flawed decks throughout the poker world. Boy, did you guys ever deliver on that. So take a look in the comments of that last vlog if you want to see the stories of this. A number of you did write in and said, which was also the case with me, saying, I've simply never seen that. And I still have never been in a game where it's happened, but a lot of you have, and it was really good to see all the stories that came in regards to that, because it feels like one of those things that can basically never happen, but obviously there are a lot of ways in which it could. I love the time where someone wrote in saying that they once saw an entire deck full of nothing but spades and hearts. 26 spades and 26 hearts. You get hilarious stuff like that in there. There were also a lot of new subscribers after that last vlog, and if you haven't already and you're a fan of cash game action, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on when our latest videos come out featuring cash game action. It's a Friday morning, going to head over to Peppermill and check out the game today. I'm going to try not to make any egregious mistakes like I made in the last vlog. I'm sure if any of you guys were ever to do a video on like top 5 worst played hands by Ben Deach, which by the way I'd watch if someone put that together. That hand I lost last week should definitely be on it. The only thing I did right in the hand was making sure I lost that money to the right opponent, which is a skill in and of itself in the poker world, making sure that when you do lose, you lose to the right guys. I cruise down West Plum Lane on a snowy day in Reno and get to Peppermill around 1 o'clock and get the last seat available in the $5 game going on and buy in for $2,000. First hand is a big one. It comes when I check raise Queen Jack on a Queen Jack 6 2-heart board and proceed to get 3-bet jammed on for $700 more. One player who had cold called my initial $200 raise folded there. And I, of course, ain't going nowhere.
They're gonna need to send in the National Guard or fucking SWAT team, because I ain't going nowhere!
I ask him if he wants to run it twice. He agrees to, showing ace-4 of hearts for the nut flush draw. So we are a 67% favorite to win, but lose the first one. So once again, I'm going to need your help to win board number 2. Now, I hate to ask for this too often, but getting scooped here right out of the gate would really suck. So hit that like button because it clearly helps me in these spots. Turn does not improve him. Can we fade the river as well? Yes! Thankfully, we do end up salvaging a chop on a board we hope to win both on, but are unable to do it. That was a close one. Then in a limped pot, I flopped the nut flush draw on 10-5-3 2 hearts. Middle position bets out for 10, which to me just screamed weakness. I elected on a small semi-bluff raise in case he didn't have a pair here, because he's probably not folding a 10, no matter how much I bet, unless it's an absurd amount. So I make it 30, and he proceeds to call. And with 75 in, the turn's an ace. I'm planning on betting this, obviously, but he decides to lead out instead. It's always pretty strong to get raised and then just fire out on the next street. So I just call the $45 wager, and with 165 in, I brick the river. He bets out, and I fold face up. I don't know what I'm up against, but I know my hand is no good. He shows ace-king, so I made the right fold, but my thought process of getting a fold from a non-paired hand on that flop apparently was flawed. Though I did raise the king-queen of hearts against him a few minutes later and take down a pot with the c-bet on an ace-high flop. I lose a few small pots, and then we get a $15 open under the gun, and I have ace-king in the big blind and make it 40, which he calls. So with 80 in, the flop is ace-king-9 rainbow. With top 2, I bet 50, and he calls. So with 180 in, the turn's a queen. Due to the fact that that card coming makes it less likely that he's going to have ace-queen, I elect to down bet here, making it 85, and he proceeds to call. With 350 in, the river is a 3, and I bet 150. He thinks about it for only a few seconds and calls. So we have a $650 pot, and he did have ace-queen. So we drill a lucky turn card and take down a nice one early. Then we get a limp +2, followed by a small raise and several colors. I have ace-queen of clubs in the big blind and make it 110. +2 doesn't even think about it and jams all in for 600. We've all been in this spot. I make the frustrating fold because, as you know, I don't always try the squeeze in that spot, and to run into a certainly nutted hand when I did was pretty damn aggravating. I then play a 4-way limped pot in the low jack with queen jack, and with 20 in, the flop comes king 10 deuce 2 spades, and under the gun 2 bets 10. I elected to semi-bluff raise that, making it 50. The others fold, but he doesn't. So with 120 in, the turn is the 7 of clubs, and he checks. This particular opponent is never going to be slow playing anything here. He likely either has a king or a flush draw, and I figure I should be able to get him off most of his kings if I fire again. I make it 135, and he thinks about it for only a few seconds and calls. So at 390 in, the river is the 5 of clubs. I brick out everything, but he checks. I need to bet here, obviously, to win, and that is what I elect to do. I fire $310, which I thought would be enough to make it tough on a hand like king-queen, but he clearly did not have that hand, as he started complaining about missing his nut flush draw. I lose about 100 on an unsuccessful bluff, and then I thought that one of the two guys on my right would be losing their entire stack on a king-high board after they got all in pre-flop for $1,500 each, but neither one of them had kings. They both ended up having pocket aces. Then I switch seats, and for the first time in quite a few vlogs, find myself cruising down the street in my 6-4. I make it 25 over a limp and get 2 callers. With 75 in, it comes deuce 5 7 2 diamonds. Feels like a must semi-bluff spot here. And I figure 60 will at least get one of these two out. It doesn't. Both call. So with 265 in, turn is an offsuit jack. I fire again, making it 150, and this time instead of both calling, they both toss their hands into the muck. Another all-in takes place as we wait for hands. This time pocket 10s beats queen jack on king 10-9, getting all in on the flop with the board pairing kings on the turn. Button straddles 10, and I pick up ace queen under the gun 2 and make it 40. Hijack cold calls and button defends. With 125 in, the flop comes ace queen 5 rainbow. With top 2 and no flush draws out there, I'm looking to keep both guys in here. I bet 45, and sure enough, I succeed in my mission. With 260 in, the turn is a 10. I bet 85, and the hijack raises at 225, which results in the button folding. I do not fold, though. So with 710 in, the river is a 6. I know that he's unlikely to value bet a weaker hand here. Probably just going to check it back. But I also know that he will call with a lot of hands that I beat. So with that in mind, it means that since I'm out of position, I've got to bet. I make it 250, and almost immediately, he pays off, giving us a $1,210 pot. I show my hand, and he mucks. It wasn't all bad for that particular opponent against me, though. On the next hand I played against him, I raised with 9s and bet them on the turn when a second diamond hit. And you can probably see where this is going. The river was the 9 of diamonds. I bet a little over 100 and folded to his raise because, again, he's a guy who calls too much, not a guy who raises without a nutted hand. Knowing these types of tendencies will make you money. It has for me. I then changed to table 5, but it may have not been a great decision based on the lineup at that point. There was one older lady in the game. She used to play very aggressive, but post-COVID has not shown that at all. I pick up ace-jack of spades on the button and make it 60 over a few limps. She comes right back over the top after limping to 200. I'm expecting her to show kings or queens, but instead, she shows the skinny.
Oh, nice hand. Oh!
So we get bluffed there, but maybe she's rounding back into her old form after all. The last 2 hours of the night were brutal, just death by 1,000 cuts. I changed tables a second time, which I think should actually be against the rules, even though I did it here. I think the rule should be 1 table change per person per day. I ended up flopping top pair on multiple occasions, and I just kept running into guys who were representing better hands than that, and for the most part, I believed him and had to fold my hands. The lone bright spot came when I got dealt pocket aces. I did make a little back on that hand, though I did not end up getting paid off on the river. And that takes us to this hand. Under the gun opens to 15, and as you can see here, 4 guys call. I have Queen Jack of Diamonds in the cutoff, a hand affectionately known as the Mac in Reno, because one of 2 things is true. Either A, he's never played this hand in 60 years of live poker, or B, he's simply never been dealt it. I can't decide which one I think it is. This would normally be a spot where I'd consider a squeeze, but I've got to be honest with you, I was planning on leaving in 5 minutes, and that affected my decision here. I opted to just call. Big blind calls as well. So with 105 in, it comes 10-5-3, 2 diamonds. Under the gun 2 bets 20, and that triggers a parade of callers on my right. Again, not looking to play a massive pot here, I just call. And the player who will ultimately play the key role in this hand, the original raiser under the gun, just calls as well. So only the big blind goes out. And with 225 in, the turn is the 9 of diamonds, giving me a flush and a backdoor open-ended straight flush draw. As you can see in my video, all of these guys now decide to check to me. I decide to bet very small here for several reasons, one of them being that I know a couple of these guys and they could be slow playing the nuts here. And I wanted to try to be able to figure that out if one of these guys were doing it. I bet 65, and only under the gun calls. So this is already just a really weird hand. The river comes a brick, the queen of spades, and now he jams all in for 385. There are a lot of opponents that I could potentially fold this hand against. This is not one of them. Even though I did think about it for a while because I did not have a good feeling. I make the call, giving us a $995 pot. He shows ace-6 of diamonds for the nuts. I do think that even if I had squeezed it pre-flop, he would have called, so we would have gotten the money in one way or another. So on a day where I had 1 foot out the door, booking a decent win, I'd have to settle for the most minuscule of wins you could have. A frustrating way to end an up and down day. All right, that is, drum roll please, a $31 win here at Peppermill on a Friday night. And, well, I'm pretty pissed off, in all honesty, about that last hand. It was a spot where I felt, given that there were that many people in the pot, that I could be getting flush over flushed, but against that particular opponent, he's been known to make a move here and there, to say the least, and, well, he earned getting paid off there, I guess, even though it didn't feel like it was a bluff. You know, it's almost like I've had such a bad stretch when it comes to these flushes. I keep flopping the nut flush. I think 3 times this month I've flopped the nut flush. I've lost all 3 of those hands. And now I make the queen high flush on the river, and of course I lose that hand as well to the nut flush. It's just been a miserable month for that. But the one thing all of these hands had in common, it felt like I was beat. Now, this was an example of a hand where it's like, I think I just have to call based on who the opponent is and how strong my hand is, or whatever the case you want to say. But all 4 of those hands that I'm talking about, it just felt like I was beat. I wish I could learn to just go with my feeling every time. All right, before we get to this week's question of the week, if you're interested in playing some poker when you're on the go, it's a good way to practice and keep yourself in the game between sessions. Download Poker Bros and jump in the high society group. There are plenty of different variants of poker available, and I think you'll find the action good. Just use my referral code and click on the link in the description below. This week's question comes from Gene. He asks, how much have the games changed since you started? And what are the differences? Well, ultimately the games haven't changed a ton since I started. A lot of the guys that give me the most action then are still the guys that give me the most action now, but I will tell you some of the differences. And obviously the unfortunate truth, just in general when it comes to poker, is that the games get worse every year. And while that may not always be the case from one given year to another, over the long term, the guys who give the most action generally aren't going to play more as the years go on. I missed the true glory days of poker. 2004 to 2007, the party poker days. I wasn't playing then. Even though I was old enough to play, I did not start playing until 2008 when I got involved through this weird coincidence of my radio station at the time putting me into a tournament at the Atlantis when they were doing a promotion, which I've told that story on the vlog before, but I'm obviously aware of the fact that nothing can compete with those years when the amount of money coming in from online sites and just the amount of people who had to play online poker was unparalleled, and it's never going to get back to that again, you wouldn't imagine. And when you think back to those days of when I started, and again I started in 2008, I didn't really know what I was doing until 2011, so you had a lot of differences. I mean, in general there was just way more limping in, which you still see, but there were just so many guys that just limped, and then if someone would raise, they would always limp call. Things like that don't happen as much anymore. There was less bet folding, so whenever someone would make a bet on the river, it almost didn't matter how much they would get raised. They would always call that bet. And back when I started, I would see a number of guys, and this is something that Bart Hansen has talked about on the Crush Life Poker podcast, and you just don't really see these guys as much anymore, but there were guys, as weird as this may sound, that were addicted to losing. Like, they didn't know what it was like to win, and they didn't really want to find out. It was like their goal to come in and lose, as crazy as that might sound. And they would stay as late into the night as they have to in order to accomplish that goal, and a lot of them were very good at accomplishing that goal on a number of occasions. So those are some of the main differences, but of course now there's just way more access to information and ways to learn how to play. The training sites back when I started were very much focused on online poker, very few live training sites, and that's one of the big advantages I had. Was I was one of the first guys to find Bart Hansen. It wasn't called Crush Live Poker then, it was called something else, but he transitioned it into Crush Live Poker a couple of years later. And that was the first really real training site to focus on live poker play. And I was able to reap the rewards of that, picking up on the things that they really taught about. I think the more interesting question would be to talk to an online grinder about how much different the games are. I think that's where the real change is. I think the live games were good then and they're good now. I think the online games back then were unbelievable, and now it's kind of a struggle for a lot of people because there's just so many guys that are just playing so few hands but spreading themselves across so many tables that it results in so many of the games just being completely unbeatable. So that's actually the thought that kind of came to my mind first, Gene, when you asked that question, was that the main difference is online games. But there is a difference also in live games with, as I mentioned, fewer recreational players, less limping now, and a lot more bet folding now. But what can I say? My hourly rate is higher than it's ever been, so maybe none of that means a damn thing.